investors. And again, welcome, Carmen. Really appreciate you being with us this evening. I'm looking forward to have a great and exciting dialogue about evaluating startups. I want our audience to know that I'm very much aware that you want to talk about the topic of the charlas, but I also want you to know that, as we were preparing for this charla with Carmen, I had the opportunity to have a couple of conversations with her, and I got to learn about her career journey. And I tell you, I was extremely inspired by that. So, without further ado, Carmen, would you like to tell us about your career journey? And again, welcome to this edition of Charlas with Angeles Investors.
Well, thank you for having me. And I have a special request for that playlist. It was fantastic and really lively. So thanks again for having me. My journey has always been in the industry of finance. My first job coming out of the University of Southern California was at a firm called Dimensional Fund Advisors, DFA. The founder, David Booth, put his name on the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business. And so for me, coming in as a newbie into the finance world and connecting with Nobel laureates was just left a great impression on me in terms of the financial markets. Where I am today is completely on the opposite end of the spectrum in the startup world. In fact, I didn't know about startups until I went to the Haas School of Business at Berkeley, which is effectively the epicenter of tech. So if you think of Los Angeles, where I am, most people think of it as the entertainment capital of the world. At Berkeley Haas, it's everything centers around technology. And in going to get my business degree, my goal was to come out of business school and think about ways to create wealth in the Latino community. And I quickly realized that the avenue and the vehicle for that very well was venture capital. When you look at the capital markets and the companies that are at the top of the market cap, Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, they're all venture backed. And so they start with a seed investment from angel groups like Angeles. So that is a bit about my journey. I've been in the industry now for 5 years. When I graduated, I thought about launching my own fund to invest in underrepresented founders. I saw a lot of wealth creation, but what I didn't see was representation. In fact, that is still lacking. Women and underrepresented minorities manage about 1% of the assets under management in the financial market. So it's something that I'm still passionate about, and that's been my journey to date.
Excellent, Carmen. No, really inspiring, and it's a great intersection with the mission that we have here at Angeles Investors. So let's get into the topic of evaluating startups, right? I mean, we have many members in our angel group which have different levels of experience in angel investing and investing in early stage companies and ventures. They want to hear from you. What would you say are the most important aspects to evaluate on early stage startups?
Yeah, it's interesting because early stage just compromises so many different layers. So when I think about early stage, I think about pre-seed and seed and post-seed. And so as an investor, as an institutional investor, the seed stage has been broken up into little chunks. And along the way, you're looking for signals that the company is going to be able to break out. So at the very early stages, when you think about pre-seed, In many cases, there is barely a product. There's probably no IP. There may be one or two people starting the company. And so there, at that very, very early stage, the things I look for are the team. What problem are they trying to solve, and what is their motivation? I was on a call earlier today with one of the companies that we invested at the seed stage, and they were able to get to market in less than a year. And this is in the climate tech space. They were able to build a battery management system in under a year. And that really speaks to the team and their ability to execute and their expertise in that market.
Mm-hmm. Look, I'm a technologist, right? So when I got into investing in early stage startups, I focus myself in those companies that have technology at the core of the business models, right? And I think you also focus on those kind of companies, platform businesses, things like that. And I agree with you. I mean, at the beginning, when they are very, very early stage, the revenue might not tell you that much, right? Maybe it shows you a little bit of traction, but the team and the quality of the product. I typically also spend a significant amount of time, because of my background, understanding what kind of technologies they're using. Are they using technologies that are more a hype than a reality? And also, if they show revenue, I like to see not only the amount of revenue, the quality, right? I mean, how much of that is recurrent versus non-recurrent revenue. And in some cases, specifically early stage, I like to look at who are the customers, the early customers, right? I don't know what you think, but that provides me a sense of who is having interest in this product, right? And also makes me think about potential opportunities for, exit strategies or things like that.
I agree with you. I mean, at the very early stage, a company is going to be iterating constantly on what they're building. I'm in MiLA, we invest in tech you can touch. So a lot of our companies went to market with a 3D printed prototype. So they didn't even have to spend money on tooling or any manufacturing to be able to get feedback from their customers and iterate. And I think that puts them more on a level playing field with a software company who's able to release software, get feedback, iterate, and go through that whole loop.
Absolutely. Yeah, hardware is a completely different game, right? I mean,
it certainly can be, yes.
So let me ask you, I mean, you talk about teams, right? And you look at the team at early stages, and we agree on that as being an important indication of future success of a company. When you meet an entrepreneur and her or his team, how do you know that team, that entrepreneur, are up to the challenge, right? How do you know that?
So being an entrepreneur is like being on a roller coaster. I think an entrepreneur needs to be very, very comfortable with uncertainty. So there's a lot of people who shy away from uncertainty. In fact, they want the complete opposite. They want stability, right? And so for an entrepreneur, I need to know that they're comfortable with chaos. I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm very optimistic and I'm moving forward. So comfortable with chaos and uncertainty. But also mission driven. So I've invested in an entrepreneur who said, I'm on a mission to rid the world of diesel. That company is called Caban Systems, and I talk about them a lot because it's led by a Latina entrepreneur who made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And, you know, that's her vision. That's why she started Kaban Systems. She left a very comfortable, high-paced, venture-backed startup to branch out on her own to solve this problem in a market that she knew well.
Yeah, that's, and you know, when I think about teams myself, again, I fall into the trap of being a technologist, specifically product companies. I like to spend some time, maybe a conversation with whoever is the CTO or the product owner of that venture. It's very interesting to know how they're thinking about the product from the technical perspective, right? And specifically how they think about evolving the product, right? I mean, sometimes founders show a product roadmap that, you know, it's 10,000 feet, right? But the devil is in the details in technology. And you know that better than anyone else. You're working with hardware, it's even more difficult. So I mean, I want to know how they're thinking about the scaling up the team specifically, right? If they're using partners, who are those partners that are helping them to achieve the product evolution? So I like to talk to the entrepreneur, but I also like to have a video call, hopefully with whoever is the CTO of a company. I have a much more closer look at the technology aspect. So that's great. Yeah. That's great, Carmen. We talk about revenue being an indicator of traction or product market fit. You said, you know, maybe at the beginning, there's not so much revenue to show, and you know, companies are iterating a product and things like that. Once you have the revenue number in front of you at any stage, well, what characteristics, how do you evaluate the quality of the revenue, Carmen?
You know, I think a lot about I look at it from very different aspects. One is, you know, typically entrepreneurs will show me their gross revenue. And gross revenue does not take into account all of the costs and the expenses that go into making that product. And so what I really want to see is the net margin, right? So take out all of the costs and show me what's left. And then we have a discussion from there. And if it's a slim margin, that's okay. It just tells me that you need a lot of volume to be able to give me a good return on my investment. So I think that it's complex and very layered when we're having a revenue discussion. I'm also thinking about what outside of revenue are you providing to the client, because I don't want to invest in an area where it's simply a race to the bottom, right? Like where another competitor is going to come in and they're just going to undercut your price, and then that's the cycle you're in, and then you're out of business. So for me, it's thinking about what is your value proposition on a whole, and that's something I think about. I also think about who are the potential acquirers of your business. So if you are pitching to a financial investor, they're going to look at your revenue in a very different way than a strategic investor, a corporate venture capitalist, for example, who might see synergies in their business line.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? You know, you were talking about the potential exit or, you know, future owners of a company. Do you have any thoughts about, you know, working with the startups and the corporate world, right? I mean, is there any opportunity to intersect those two actors as companies grow? I mean, not only the startup, but large corporations. Have you ever have an experience on that sense?
Absolutely. I think, you know, when you look at 2020, less than 10% of exits are through IPO. So what does that mean? That means that a lot of exits are happening in different ways. Either they're going off of a secondary market or they're through acquisitions. And when you think about corporate venture capitalists, the amount that they're investing in startups has almost doubled in the past few years. many of the companies that we've invested in fact, have received funding from strategic investors. And I think that is creates a lot of opportunity. So one of our companies had their whole A round taken by a strategic investor. And that was good because they were able to leverage all of their marketing department, a lot of their sales team, some of their manufacturing. And so it really took a hardware company that could look capital intensive and helped smooth out some of the costs.
Okay, well, interesting. I mean, hardware is a really niche area, right, for investing and actually evaluating startups. So very interesting thoughts. You talk about competition, right? You just talk about competition, and when you attend to a pitch night, and all founders are getting to this 4-quadrant matrix in where they show the competitors' landscape, and not surprising that their startup is always right here at the top right hand quadrant, and they all look the same, right? It's almost like a cookie cut, and I like that, because you need to be proud about your company as an entrepreneur, right? You need to be always the best, or trying to be the best, right? I mean, that should be your ambition. But from the due diligence perspective, once you see that, right, and specifically early stage, how do you investigate the competitive position of that startup?
I love that slide, and I can tell you that it saves me a lot of time. So you're right, they all do look the same, but then I'm able to print it out and make notes and say, okay, well, here's their competitor, and I'm thinking about who funded that competitor. It's almost like we're playing chess, right? And I'm trying to understand what the competitive landscape is for me as an investor. So if the competitor just got, $100 million in funding from investor ABC, and investor ABC has, regulatory expertise, and the company that I'm investing in it depends on regulation to succeed, then that makes me think twice about investing. So that's the way I look at that competition side. It really helps me understand my return potential and where I stand and how I can add value as an investor.
That's good. I mean, I typically double click in that slide, maybe many of the points you mentioned, right? But also do some research on if those competitors are talking about the company I'm trying to invest, I want to know what they're saying, right? And if they are actually, they feel uncomfortable with, even better for me, right? That might be good news, right? So sometimes you find press releases or articles in where the company you are trying to invest is being mentioned by competitors, or maybe going through my network. Some people maybe have invested in the other companies, and they might have the company I'm trying to invest in the radar screen, and always trying to understand, are you uncomfortable with this company? Why yes, why not, right? So that's also another nice way of understanding the competitive landscape that we always see in the decks. Interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I would say another thing: if there isn't competition, that also is kind of a red flag for me, because I'm like, well, why isn't there competition? Maybe it's a little too early. I for a long time last year really started thinking heavily about quantum computing and getting excited about that. But there aren't a lot of competitors in the space, and a big reason for that is because it's extremely complicated, costly, and I think a little ahead of my time as an investor. So maybe I'm keeping an eye on it, but But yeah, in some cases, no competition is also an indicator of whether or not timing is right.
Did you ever invest in a company with no competition, with exactly that same example you shared?
Not no competition, but indirect competition. So we invested in a company called Emerge, and they were digitizing the sense of touch. So their technology is used in immersive computing. So that's VR, AR. We invested in them a few years ago. And at that time, it didn't really seem relevant. Like, why do you know, why you're typically able to have connection with people if you want it. But now it makes a lot more sense. And so their competition was indirect in the sense that you could digitize touch using gloves, but with their technology, it's just a device. It focalizes ultrasound rays so that you can sense touch. So indirect competition.
That's great. That's great. Great company. Looks like great company. Let us know
if we can help
Emerge.
You with that. Emerge.io.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we in Angeles Investors, our operations team is always working, like 3 or 4 weeks before every pitch night in due diligence, right? And takes significant amount of time to prepare the reports for our Angeles. And by the way, I want to say, to all our Angeles attending this charla, please do your homework. Come to the pitch night. Read those due diligence reports. Be part of the conversations that are happening in Gust. You should come to the pitch night with a very good understanding about the company. And why not? I mean, you have the pre-screening video, so you should be able to access that. Be ready for asking smart and tough conversations to entrepreneurs. But going back to the question of due diligence, right? You as an investor, right? I mean, what are you expecting to see in a great due diligence report?
So I'm looking to see what needs to happen in order for this company to succeed. So, is it dependent on regulation? You can look at Uber right now, and they're faced with a lot of regulatory issues on the labor side. So that's one example. It's what needs to happen in order for this company to succeed. In some cases, it might take a change in behavior if it's a consumer product, right? And so pre-COVID, I would say that was very difficult, and post-COVID, you saw a lot of technology accelerate because consumers had to change their behavior really quickly. So I would say number one thing is what needs to happen for this company to be successful, and list those out. I would also say, what's the exit potential of this company? As I said, very few companies are exiting via IPO. So what does an exit look like? Is it to an acquirer? Is there a big corporate that's looking to build up their expertise in this technology? We see some of that with Microsoft trying to, or potentially acquiring TikTok. So those are some of the things.
That's a great example.
So those are some of the things that I look for in a due diligence report.
Let me ask you still about the due diligence report, about the financial, statements, fundamentals of the business. Which is a documentation and numbers that you have to have in front of you to really say this company is, from the financial standpoint, is solid. I will continue to I will continue to the next conversation.
Yeah, a lot of it is where is break even? When does this company hit break even? Because once a company hits break even, the power dynamics change. the company then has the ability to be more stable. So in the case of COVID, where you have this externality, if a company is close to break even or in break even mode, they're going to have the ability to survive 3 months or longer, right? We're seeing the impacts of COVID to our companies be about 3 to 4 months, and those companies that had that runway we're in a good position to be able to survive. So I'm really looking for what's that break-even point? What do you need to get there?
Oh, that's clear. And you know what we are seeing in Angeles investors, one of the things we spent, I would say, more time during COVID was to look at the cash situation of companies, right? And not because we're expecting the cash situation is perfect, because all startups and small businesses are going through tough times. Large companies are going through tough times. But also you want to understand if entrepreneurs have taken, some measures to counterbalance that challenge, right? Like, securing a bridge loan or something like that, right? I mean, so they can continue operations. One thing that concerns me when I see those things is not only the lack of cash, but also that if you're in a company that is innovating and you have your CEO and your management team, focused on how to survive day after day because cash is really not there, right? I mean, the whole aspiration and the whole ambition and energy, instead of going into iterating the product to the next level, it goes into surviving, right? So that doesn't put entrepreneurs, in the right mindset to continue to lead their ventures, right? So
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I
think you're right. It looks, there's a lot of factors to consider. You also have to look, as you mentioned, where their spend is going. I think that entrepreneurs have to balance technology development with developing a sales pipeline. And so when you're looking at their operations, where's their headcount and what are they spending money on? Sometimes a customer might just want a Ford like Focus versus not a Maserati, so.
Oh, absolutely. So let's go to pitch night, right? You get to pitch night, or you are receiving startups for consideration. In your perspective, right, as a venture capital leader, what are good examples of great pitch decks or presentations, and also any bad examples of a pitch?
I think the best pitches are short and concise. Problem, solution, and what is your right to win? So
how long, Carmen? How long would you say?
10 slides. Give me 10 slides. I mean,
How many minutes?
10 minutes or less.
Excellent.
Yeah. There's been, you ask about a bad pitch or not so good pitch. It's the pitch where, 5 minutes in, you're thinking to yourself, well, what does this company do? What problem are they solving? And everything sounds great. They're educating you on the market or, the industry, but you still don't know what they do. And so answering that question as soon as possible is the best tactic. I had an investor tell me what you do in one sentence or less, and that could be a challenge for entrepreneurs who want to give you a elevator pitch, 30 seconds. They want more time than that to tell you what they do. But if you can make it concise, then that will stick in someone's mind.
Excellent. I agree with you with the problem statement, right? I mean, sometimes I get frustrated when I'm 5 minutes into the presentation and I don't know what we're trying to solve, right? Which is maybe a basic question to answer, as early as possible in the pitch. Thank you for that, Carmen. I'm sure we have in the audience many colleagues, Latinos and Latinas, and colleagues around the country that are thinking, do I get into angel investing? Is this for me, right? All these people are talking how exciting it is to invest in early stage startups. Do I jump in or not? I mean, what would you tell them?
Before I became a venture capitalist, I was an angel investor. And what drove me at the end of the day was, do I want this technology to exist in the world? And I started to develop my own personal thesis, my own point of view. A lot of that had to do with representation. My first angel investment was into a Latino who at the time the company was called Regali, and they were creating payments for people abroad, cross-border payments, right, where you could send money and the people receiving could pay their electricity bill or whatever. And I thought, oh my gosh, that would have been so awesome if that existed. When my mom was sending money back to Peru and not knowing where it was going. So as an angel investor, do I want this technology to exist in the world, or do I believe in the entrepreneur and the team? And then, what I think you're building at Angeles is extremely powerful. There's a huge advantage of the power of community and cohort learning. So learning from each other is critically valuable and important. It's something that you're bringing a collective together to help a company.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It's a big team here in Angeles Investors, and a lot of passion for our mission, as Marisol said at the beginning. So, and we count on people like you to amplify the impact of the Angel Group and the mission, basically the mission, which is the most important thing. You mentioned Latinx entrepreneurs, we are also growing, right? And we're not too many, we know that, right? What would you say we need to improve, acquire, you name it, things that we need to get better at to get to the full potential of other entrepreneurs, that maybe not Latinx?
Yeah, I would say, I didn't even know venture capital existed before I went to business school and was just completely immersed in it. So I think the first step is really understanding and being financially savvy, understanding the value that venture capital brings to the ecosystem. It's important for our nation to continue being competitive in the innovation economy. I'm on the board of the National Venture Capital Association. And one of the things we're seeing is that, venture capital has decreased almost by a third because a lot of investors are looking for diversification globally. And I think that it's a lot of that diversification can be here in the US if people look to capitalize groups and communities that are currently undercapitalized. So the first step is really learning and understanding the role of venture capital and wealth creation.
Oh, thank you for that perspective. And going into diversity in the industry, right? I mean, I'm really proud of seeing more Latinas getting into the financial industry. You are a great example of that. We have many in our board and advisory board, as you know, and we all want to see more. What would be your advice for those Latinas that are listening to these charlas, and they see you and they say, wow, I want to be like Carmen. I want to have that kind of career. I want to get the excitement of being an investor. What would be your advice, Carmen, to them?
So I'm on the founding board of a group called Latinx VCs. And we have 3 pillars. One is to get more representation in established firms, the big tier 1 VCs that have billions of dollars under management. The second one is to support emerging managers like myself. I think there's 15 Latina owned and operated funds. And then the third one is to build the ecosystem. So I would encourage you to also go to our website and watch out for a series we're going to do on breaking into VC. Our plan is to provide educational content as well, and to give you a sense of what a day in our life looks like. So and breaking it down into market mapping, for example, how do you map a whole market segment? So that's one thing you can do, and one thing I can offer.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sure, let's make sure we help you with our social media channels to amplify the message of your organization. The commitment from us to help your organization. It's here, right? Let me ask you a question. We didn't talk about this question in the preparation session, so get ready. It's not going to be an easy one, right? It's like a game, right? So we have, let's say you go to a pitch night, you have 2 companies, right? One company, they're early stage. Let's say they have been 2 years in the market. One has revenue traction enough to be dangerous, right? Quality of revenue, it's pretty good. Let's say 70% is recurrent revenue, right? The rest, maybe some revenue coming from iterations of products. And on the other side, you have the other company, right? Super great technology, super good team. The CTO team is top-notch, advisory board from Microsoft, Google, but 2 years revenue is really disappointing, right? Almost nil, right? So you have, let's say, a check of $50,000, $100,000. Doesn't matter the amount, but you can choose only one startup. Which one do you choose and why? I told you, it's not going to be an easy one, right?
Well, so I'm putting my investor hat on, right? And I'm going to look at what's the exit potential. I think I've invested in companies that don't have revenue for many, many years. And that's absolutely tough, but I also have to consider what the factors are and what the reasons are for that. We've seen companies like Magic Leap who have taken in a lot of capital, and people are still waiting. So obviously you don't want a company that is just going to continue building the Maserati and never get anything to market. So I think it really, really depends. What's the exit potential on this? Who's going to acquire? Is someone going to acquire it? Oculus was sold to Facebook for $1 billion, and that play is really playing off now, right? Mark Zuckerberg really wanted to have hardware, and now he finally has it. I don't know if you've been in an Oculus experience, but it's pretty cool.
It's very good, and it's getting better. The technology is getting better.
Yeah. So a lot of these companies, you think, wow, they get acquired for a lot of money, and sometimes it's like you don't necessarily understand why unless you know the acquirer's strategy. So I would say focus in on the exit potential.
Okay. We will keep the the audience curious about where that check of $100,000 went. So. Okay, so Carmen, if you don't mind, we go to some Q&A, that we have here from the members. I'm gonna read the first one.
Okay.
I see here it says at pre-seed level, when you are assessing the team, what are the red flags you are looking for, and how do you assess those red flags?
So at pre-seed level, I am assessing the motivation. Why are you starting this company? Is your goal to get rich or to maintain control of a company? Why are you looking for fame or fortune? What are those things that you're looking for? I'm assessing a founder's curiosity. So if I'm or if my team is giving feedback, how are they processing that? They don't have to take it all, but they have to be able to process it and say, why they're not taking it, and let's have that dialogue. So I sense a sense of curiosity is pretty important. How fast are they gonna execute? And one big question that I always try to ask myself is, would I work for them?
That's a good one. Thank you, Carmen. That was a very nice tip as we assess teams. I agree with you. There is another question here that I will plus one because maybe I would have asked this question myself. It says, what are exciting technologies that you are seeing as a VC focused on hardware? Which are the exciting technologies you are seeing in the hardware field?
What are the exciting technologies that I'm seeing? So, I mentioned that I last year really dove into quantum computing. I think that could be revolutionary in so many different ways. I think it's a ways off still, but something that might be closer to reality is 5G and the technologies that enable 5G. I think those are really interesting to me. I think there are some aspects of hardware that can advance that in the areas of antennas, for example. Other things that excite me are artificial intelligence and machine learning. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about diversity and inclusion is that, if you have artificial intelligence, you have to have people that are going to build the artificial intelligence that have different perspectives. Otherwise, you're going to build it with bias involved. So I'm very curious in machine learning, artificial intelligence, and then energy is also another big an area that I'm interested in because you have so many people coming onto the grid. I think that for our grid to be resilient, we need to distribute that with renewable energy. So I think a lot about clean tech and get excited about climate tech in general.
No, thank you for that. And I agree with you with the grid challenge, specifically when we are, moving faster than before into autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, right? I mean, the consumption in the grid and the stress on the grid is going to be pretty different in the years to come. It might be different today, I'm sure, versus 5 years ago. Another question here I have is, any reading recommendations to help in understanding the world of venture capital?
So a book that I'm reading right now is called Alpha Girls, and it's about I think 5 or 6 female venture capitalists and their journey within venture capital. I think it's a fascinating history of the industry, and I think learning about history in your area or in an industry really helps set a solid foundation. I also get excited about different podcasts, but a lot of them have to do with economics, because I think that within the innovation economy, it's a global ecosystem. So I think staying on top of global innovation is also important. The NVCA has a new nonprofit called Venture Forward, and it was established specifically to provide education from venture capital. So the venture capital industry in general is relatively new. And so through this organization, we're trying to capture all of the best practices and disseminate that for the generations to come.
Excellent, excellent, Carmen. Thank you for that. I have another question here about how has your experience in VC been different as a Latina?
Well, certainly, you know, one of my goals and the reason that I continue to stay in this game is to increase representation. There's been several studies that show that diverse managers have a multiplier effect. We as a diverse manager then tend to invest more in diverse founders. Diverse founders then tend to hire diverse employees. And so when I think about the inequalities in our ecosystem, I think it's important to have more representation. I think that because there is a lack of representation, it takes me, I have to prove myself, you know, it's as both the investor and as an entrepreneur. So, you know, I've been on the founding team of a VC firm, so there's a lot of proving that I have to do.
Look, there are many questions coming, Carmen. I mean, incredible. I don't know which one to pick. So I'm going to pick the next one here because they're all very interesting. One is, what's the weight you give to the advisory board in a startup when you need to invest, right? Or evaluate?
Yeah, it's interesting question, because I think about that when I'm, you know, as I build, I'm launching my my next fund, and I'm thinking, should I have advisors, and what value are they going to bring? So I think that it's important to look at what the arrangements are in those relationships, what the motivation is, what the compensation is as well. So all of those things play a role. I think that advisors typically have, you know, I don't know, 0.25% equity stake, and so, you know, does that align with what their responsibilities are going to be?
Excellent, excellent. Another question here, I think, is the last one before we get into closing. How do you know when to take a risk on a startup idea? What motivates you to take on more risk? That's a professional and personal question. I think it's a mix.
There's been so many times where, you know, I have met an entrepreneur and I want to continue the conversation because there's something that struck me. Either they're mission driven. I mentioned Kaban Systems. She was like, I want to rid the world of diesel. We invested in a company called Amped Innovation, and for her, all she wanted to think about was how to keep people off the electric grid using renewable energy. So a lot of times it's the founders that inspire me. You know, again, I would want to work for them, and help them. And I do, as an investor, I absolutely, as soon as I invest, I'm thinking about them every day. You know, tell me what your challenges are and how I can help you get past those. Do you need to hire? A lot of times it's like, can you make an introduction to an investor, or can you help me fill this opening that I have on my team? So how can I help them? Those are a lot of the things that I think about before I invest, and what motivates me to invest.
Do you think, Carmen, thank you for the answer. Do you think every single investor is having the same approach you have? You know, it's more like a servant leadership approach, right? How can I help you? You know, you think all of them do the same?
No, I think it's important to, you know, as investors think about who they're investing in. At the end of the day, you've got to think about, do our values align? Do I have trust in who's actually making the investments in the founders as well? I think a lot about returns potential, because that's my background, right? My background's in finance, and I know that I have investors and I need to hit certain benchmarks, but I don't compromise my integrity or my values. There are certain technologies that I've looked at where I just have second thoughts, like facial recognition is one example. Transitionary energy is another one. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of opportunity, and making sure that you're aligned in your values is important.
Excellent. Well, Carmen, we are at the end of the charlas today. I mean, I have no words to say. Thank you very much for, you know, spending the time with all our members. This has been a blast for me, you know, having this interaction with you, getting to know you a little bit better, and getting to know about what you do. And specifically, thank you for all your tips about evaluating startups. Thank you everyone for participating, all our members. And I know Carmen wanted to say something before we pass the baton to the operations team.
To the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carmen. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you so much, Marcelo. It was definitely very insightful. I am definitely leaving very inspired and taking some takeaways for pitch night, which leads me into this slide. We'll be having our special edition Charla with Angeles investors featuring David Cohen. He is the co-founder of Techstars. During our Q3 pitch night, we are in partnership with Es Tiempo, and it will take place virtually via Zoom on August 28th. If you're interested in attending, guests must be accredited investors or Angel Angeles members. If you're interested in becoming a founding member, this is the criteria. So you must be an accredited investor under the SEC guidelines, invest a minimum of $20,000 a year, and actively support Angeles Investors' mission. Which include adding us to your LinkedIn profile, attending pre-screening calls where we evaluate different startups leading to pitch night, and a few other takeaways. So if you are interested in attending, you're an accredited investor or would like to be an Angeles member, please reach out to me at members@angelesinvestors.com. Also, I want to invite you to upcoming charlas, which are the following in September: Bringing Women into Angel Investing on September 8th, and State of Hispanics and in Angel NBC on September 17th. To close, I just want to thank again to our host, Marcelo DeSantis, and our guest, Carmen Palafox, for their insights and their continued support. And I want to thank everyone for attending our second charla, and I look forward to seeing all of you to our upcoming events. Recording of this charla will be available in our YouTube channel, so please feel free to share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.